Well, yesterday I saw on Twitter that Paige Patterson was trending. Now that is interesting because why in the world would a Christian leader be trending on Twitter? And so if you followed the stories, Paige Patterson's advice and counsel has been called into question. So normally, you'd think if a Christian leader is in the news, there's been some scandal or something like that. It wasn't Paige Patterson who was involved in some sex scandal or some abuse scandal. It was his advice and counsel that were called into question. Now, if you're not familiar with Paige Patterson, he worked at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He's a former president of the Southern Baptist Convention. So he's an important figure in the Southern Baptist world. But there's been a problem recently. In fact, there's been a number of problems recently when it's come to light advice that he has given to women in the past. And the most egregious was when he apparently counseled a woman not to report a rape to police and to forgive the man. I don't know all the details, so you can fill me in on more if you know more of the story in the description box. But that was enough. That was enough, combined with former incidents where his counsel was called into question regarding his advice to victims of abuse. And so basically his wisdom in handling these kinds of issues was called into question, was enough for him to be fired by Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And it's at times like this that, I look at this and I say, that I wouldn't like that advice to a woman. Hey, don't report your rapist, just, forgive him. Because guess what? It's good advice to forgive people, but there's no contradiction between saying, I forgive you, but if you're a rapist, you need to face the consequences of your actions. So I am reporting you. You can say, hey, personally, I am reporting you, but you are a rapist. You need to be taken to task. And we even find this in the Bible, right? In Acts 25. The Apostle Paul says, if I've done anything worthy of death, I do not hesitate to die. So Paul was willing to face consequences of his actions, and we should be as well. So I would also call the advice of Paige Patterson into question. But it's at times like this when I can't help but wonder if you see your leader and you say, you are not giving good advice to women in a variety of ways. And therefore, you have to step down as leader. If we can say that, then do we get to say the same thing with Muhammad? Can we say, Muhammad, you claim to be a prophet, but you give bad advice to women and to men about women? Can we say that? Well, we'd have to see what kind of advice he was giving to see it, right? To understand whether we should reject him based on his advice. So, what kind of advice does Muhammad have for women and for men who are dealing with women? Sam, what do you have here?
We're going to have a field day with this topic, and it's going to be quite disturbing and troubling, both for non-Muslims and Muslims who want to live in a fantasy world in which Muhammad was the perfect example of humanity. So let's dive into it. Chapter 4, verse 34, the fourth chapter of the Quran, verse 34. Here is what Allah said through Muhammad concerning men's relationship to women. Men are in charge of women. So far, I don't think many people would have a problem with that, but here's the problem. Because Allah has made the one of them to excel the other. Other translations will say that Allah has made men superior to women. And because they spend of their property for the support of women. So good women, now notice what the good women are, who the good women are the obedient, guarding in secret that which Allah hath guarded. As for those from whom you fear rebellion, if you have a suspicion that they're being rebellious.
So not that they've actually rebelled. No. Just if you have a suspicion.
Exactly.
So it's based on the man's personal subjective feelings.
You better believe it.
Okay, go ahead.
That's what it says. It doesn't say if they've rebelled and you got proof of it. If you fear, suspect that they're being rebellious, admonish them and banish them to beds apart and scourge them. This is the Pickthall translation. Other translations will say beat them, hit them, Abdul Halim, hit them, Muhammad, Sai International, strike them. You have one that says smack them, Hassan Al-Fati, Qarib Allah, smack them. strike them, scourge them. This is what the Quran advises men to do to women that they suspect are being rebellious, but don't really have any concrete proof.
So just imagine a situation where a man came to Paige Patterson and said, hey, I haven't really seen my wife do anything, but I fear she might be doing it. What should I do? And Paige Patterson responded, well, you smack and beat her until she does what you say, and then you have no more fear because you've really put her in her place. Do you think he'd be doing well?
Not only that, but this is Allah
Yeah.
supposedly speaking through Muhammad.
That's
and
right,
what I
the creator.
like is Muslims attack us that our Bible is corrupt. Yusuf Ali actually added the phrase lightly.
Yeah.
Because he understood that this is devastating,
Yeah.
basically, the Quran.
But to answer his question, well, if Paige Patterson is living in a Muslim country, they would actually applaud him for that advice and saying, Alhamdulillah, you're following the example of Allah and His Messenger, right? So depends on where he's teaching. In the Middle East, they'll be shouting, Takbir, Allahu Akbar, Paige Patterson. You are close to becoming a Muslim.
Now, Sam, I've heard from many Muslims that this simply refers to tapping a woman with a toothbrush.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or shaking some leaves at her,
Sawak,
something like this, right?
using the miswak,
And doesn't
yeah.
actually refer, as even the translators admit, to beating. So do we have records in the Muslim sources of what this actually entailed?
Most definitely, we have several examples of Muhammad's companions and Muhammad himself physically striking and even bruising their women. Case in point, Sahih Bukhari, Volume 7, Book 72. Now, the old numbering is number 715 because they've changed the numbering system. But you can find the old numbering system online because Bukhari's online for free. So, number 715. Narrated Ikrama, Rifa' divorced his wife, whereupon Abdurrahman bin Az-Zubair al-Qurayzi, say that 5 times fast, married her. Aisha said that the lady came wearing a green veil. Now notice, a green veil, right? And complained to her of her husband and showed her a green spot on her skin caused by beating. It was the habit of ladies to support each other. So when Allah's apostle came, Aisha said, watch this. This is now Muhammad's child bride, his favorite bride. Notice her assessment of the condition of Muslim women. I have not seen any women suffering as much as the believing women, meaning Muslim women.
Hold on. So this is Aisha, the mother of the faithful, Muhammad's child bride,
Yes.
claiming that Muslim women during the time of Muhammad, not in some area of the world where they got away from Muhammad's teachings, in Islamic territories governed by Muhammad, Muslim women were being treated worse than pagan women, than the women of the polytheists.
Yeah. That's what she says, black and white. I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing woman. Now notice what she says. Look, her skin is greener than her clothes. Now,
That
remember,
green dress she was wearing?
a green dress, and yet the spot was even much more greener than what she was wearing.
So this poor woman was beaten until her skin turned green.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And what makes this worse, if you continue reading, it's somewhat lengthy. Muhammad doesn't rebuke the husband, but he rebukes the wife for accusing her former husband of being impotent. So he doesn't say a word to the husband, shame on you, how dare you hit her so hard as to leave a bruise so green that makes her green veil pale in comparison.
He doesn't say that.
Says nothing. He rebukes her for
rebukes her.
accusing her husband of being impotent.
For being a bad woman.
That's it.
Okay, so Muhammad's advice to this woman who was beaten until her skin turned green was, be a better wife.
Yes,
and
sir.
then you don't have to deal with this problem anymore.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so can we imagine if a woman had come in, Paige Patterson, my husband's beaten me until my skin turned green, and he said, well, just stop being such a bad wife. And that would be the advice.
Exactly. Now, some people will tell
problem.
you, okay, that's Muhammad's companions, but Muhammad never laid a finger on any of his wives.
This was his advice, though, just to be
Precisely.
clear. Okay.
And
But
not
yeah,
only his advice, he actually acted upon it, and surprise,
he
surprise.
acted upon his
better believe it.
his own divine revelation about beating women?
Yeah,
right.
this is
Oh
one
my
of the
goodness.
few, by the way.
Wait. Isn't he the pattern of conduct for Muslims?
You got it.
So
Yeah.
wait, the pattern of conduct for Muslims himself beat his wives?
Yes.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you said the Prophet was actually upset with the woman,
Yes,
right? He
yes.
wasn't actually upset with the husband.
No.
And I want to add to what you just said, for instance, to support what you're saying. For instance, many people know by now that Muhammad actually says that women don't have common sense.
Exactly.
And here's what he was saying. Muhammad says, O womenfolk, you should give charity and ask much forgiveness, for I saw you in bulk, basically, amongst the dwellers of hell. A wise lady, I like this, a wise lady among them says, why is it, Messenger of Allah, that our folk is in bulk in hell? Look the answer. Upon this, the Holy Prophet observed, you curse too much and are ungrateful to your spouses. That's one of the reasons why they're going to go to hell, actually.
Yeah, precisely. Because
They're
they don't.
ungrateful to their spouse.
They
So
don't-
wait. Hang on. Check this
got
out.
it,
Check
yeah.
this out. If they're going to hell because they're ungrateful to their husbands, then the husband is actually doing them good if he puts them in their place and helps them to be
Exactly.
more grateful.
He's saving
so
them
it's
from
their good.
hellfire.
So do we have examples of Muhammad helping women in this way?
Oh, very much so.
Okay.
And what's ironic, he helped his child bride, the very child bride that complained that Muslim women suffered more greatly than any other group of women.
So she's trash talking
Yes.
the community of Muslim men for being so abusive towards their
Yes.
Muslim wives.
So
Okay.
Muhammad had to set her in place, right? Because
Okay.
he wanted to spare her from Jahannam. So this is the love of the Prophet, the mercy of the Prophet.
Okay.
After all,
It's a mercy to all men.
21:107. He's a mercy unto mankind. And what could be more merciful than beating Aisha into submission so that she escapes the fire of hell? So this is Sahih Muslim, book 4, number 2127. Now it's quite lengthy, so I'm just going to read the relevant part. Here it is. He struck me on the chest,
This is
which
Aisha talking.
yes, the
Okay.
child bride. Remember, I keep emphasizing child bride because the audience may not know this. Muhammad was 54 years old when he consummated marriage to Aisha, who was 9 years old. So here's a grown man sleeping with a
Who is the pattern of conduct for all Muslim men?
Yes, and again, living out the very teachings of the Quran, because it's chapter 65, verse 4 of the Quran that says that men can actually marry prepubescent minors who haven't even reached puberty and consummate marriage, divorce them so that someone else can marry them. That's 65, verse 4. So here's Aisha, Muhammad's child bride. She says, he struck me on the chest, which caused me pain. And then said, did you think that Allah and His Apostle would deal unjustly with you? Now, isn't that ironic?
Unjustly, meaning let you off the hook.
Yeah.
Or we're going to blast you one.
Exactly. Because we would think justice
Talking
is,
Jackie Gleason here, right?
right? To the moon, Alice. But we would think that justice means that he'd be gentle with his wife. Actually, no. Justice means that if you do something deserving punishment, you better believe I'll be the first to punish you. So he hit her in the chest and caused her extreme pain.
So Allah commands that if you fear rebellion from your wives, you smack and beat them into submission. We see Muhammad himself, the Prophet, the pattern of conduct for all men, beating his wife Aisha. We see his followers beating their wives, even until their skin turned green. And who does he rebuke? He rebukes the wives. What else do we got?
Well, it gets worse for women, unfortunately. Here is another hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari 2658. It says that the Prophet said, isn't the witness of a woman equal to half of that of a man? Notice, a woman's testimony is considered in a legal setting to equal half of that of a man. Why? The woman asked. Yes, he says, this is because of the deficiency of her mind. I mean, honestly, I always wonder, how can Muslim women actually live with these kind of teachings?
Matter of fact, along those lines,
Yes.
let's go back to the incident that got Paige Patterson fired, which was him advising a woman not to go to the authorities with her claim that a man had raped her. Yeah. Now, if this woman were to come forward in an official Sharia context and say, "I've been raped," and the man says, "Stop lying," who wins that one?
Oh, she's in trouble.
Who wins that one?
She's in trouble because according to Surah 24, you have to have at least 4 witnesses to confirm whether rape has taken place, and according to some Muslims, they have to even see actual penetration. So if she says it and he denies it, she gets in trouble because by her own confession, she's testifying to having committed sexual intercourse.
And this is the
So
highest
she would be in
number.
trouble.
Yes.
So just to be clear, if a woman comes and says, "Ha, this man raped me, and that's why, look, I'm even pregnant now
Oh,
due
yeah,
to
she's
the
in
rape,"
trouble.
and then he says, "What? What are you talking about? I didn't do any such thing." She's already admitted to having sex, and the pregnancy is proof that she's had sex. But her testimony can't outweigh his, and she doesn't have the required number of witnesses, and so he goes free, and she, even in a modern enlightened country like Pakistan, she goes to prison. Pakistani prisons are filled with women who are victims of rape,
And
who
Afghanistan
can't prove
also.
their cases. Yeah.
That's why I emphasize the fact that we're not speaking theoretically. This actually happens.
Yeah, and the thing is,
People end
here's
up in
what's
jail.
so funny is like, Everything else, you need just 2 eyewitnesses. Here, you need 4. Watching a woman getting raped, what are they doing?
Yeah,
I mean, why don't they just step in and protect this woman, basically?
If 4 guys came up and said, "Hey, I watched this woman getting raped," I would be like, "Well, I already don't trust you guys anyway, right?"
Precisely,
So,
and that's all because of what happened with Muhammad Aisha,
Exactly.
as outlined in Surah 24, which would be for a future topic. But one thing I think I read, maybe you can confirm, that Paige Patterson told them to be silent about it, right? Like not make it public. Well, interestingly, in giving that advice, it's quite similar to what Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph and Muhammad's father-in-law, said regarding a man beating his wife. Let me read it. This comes from Sunan Abu Dawud as well as Sunan Ibn Majah. Umar reported, the Prophet said, "No man shall be asked for the reason of beating his wife. No man shall be asked for the reason of beating his wife." And then another narration says, "A man should not be asked why he beats his wife." So in giving that advice, it's ironic that Paige Patterson is actually more closely following the Sunnah, the example of Muhammad, than he is the Bible. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, very. So, just imagine that had been the situation, right?
Yeah.
That had been the situation. Someone comes forward and she says, "Hey, my husband's been beating me, and this guy's calling him out." The response would be, "Hey, you have no right to
Precisely.
question or challenge that man
right.
on why he's beating his wife." Why? Because it's not based on any outward evidence that might be examined. It's based on the man's personal feelings.
right.
You can't call his personal feelings into question, right?
And added to that is because Islamically speaking, women are property that men own. And this brings me to another passage, chapter 2 of the Quran, verse 223. Chapter 2, verse 223. Your women are your field, your tillage, for you to cultivate. That's in parentheses. It's for you. Doesn't even say to cultivate. Your women are your field, your tillage for you. So go into your field, your tillage, as you will, as you desire, and send good deeds before for your souls, and fear Allah, and know that you'll one day meet Him. So according to the Quran, women are property, a field that a man owns and possesses, and he can plow into it the way he deems fit.
Now, suppose the situation were modified a little. Suppose this man went out and captured a woman in battle, right?
Yeah.
He captured this woman. Suppose he captured her and then he raped her, and then this woman came to her leader, came to Paige Patterson and said, "Hey, this guy captured me and took me as his slave, and now he treats me like his sex slave. Now he rapes me all the time. I want justice." What would the response from an Islamic perspective be?
Chapter 4, verse 24 is the response. And I'm just going to read the verse, and then I know you had other things to add.
I'm going to just close with some comments, but go ahead.
424 is the answer. Also prohibited are women already married. So married women are prohibited, except those whom your right hands possess. In other words,
Did everybody hear?
Yeah.
Except
those that your right hand possess. Meaning, not all forms of adultery are condemned in Islam. There is a type of adultery that Allah and His Messenger allow, and that's the type where if I attack a place and I take captive women who are married, I can then have sex with them, rape them, and sell them off. And this is not just theoretical. This passage, according to the Muslim sources, was composed directly to address this issue. For example, in Sunan Abu Dawud, Volume 2, number 2150. Sunan Abu Dawud, Volume 2, number 2150. Abu Sayyid al-Khudri said, the Apostle Allah sent a military expedition to Autas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunayn. Now watch this. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captives. Some of the companions of the Apostle of Allah were reluctant. See, they showed some moral resolve. Were reluctant to have intercourse with the female captives in the presence of their husbands who are unbelievers. So you see the image of God here convicting them, right? Bearing the image of God, they had a moral compass. This is something shameful to do, man. How can we have sex with them? Their husbands are still alive. What did Allah and His Messenger say? So Allah the Exalted sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you, save those whom your right hands possess. That is to say, they are lawful for them when they complete their waiting period.
Yeah, I love it. You know, every time there's a question, somehow Allah steps in to help His prophet. I call it the I verse. You should be having an app, call it iVerse, you know, whatever you want, just come down immediately. Yeah. And here's the thing, not only destroying their freedom, not only destroying their sense of security, but shaming them also, destroying their honor.
That's exactly.
And so here's the situation we find ourselves in. Paige Patterson has given some bad advice to women in the past. Muhammad gives far, far, far worse advice to women and to men on how to treat women. Just as one final example, if you're a husband and you have to go out of town for various reasons and your wife has to be around a man for some reason, for instance, someone works around the house, a household slave happens to be a man, and you are going to be away while she's around the man, Muhammad was asked, what do I do about this situation? What do I do in this situation where my wife's going to be working around a man? Muhammad's response from Allah. This used to be part of the Quran. Aisha had the only copy. It got eaten by a sheep, conveniently, right?
Holy sheep.
But the advice there that Muhammad gave, the command from Allah, was that the woman, you should have your wife breastfeed the man 10 times. You should have her breastfeed the man 10 times, and that way he'll technically be her son.
You said a man, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking a kid.
Yeah. Grown man. This is breastfeeding an adult, right? So if you're worried that your wife and this man that she's around are going to be sexually attracted to each other, just have her put her breasts in the man's mouth 10 times, and that way there won't be that same sexual attraction. This was the advice that Allah gave in the Quran. This was what Muhammad told his followers. His wife Aisha, rightly, may I add, made that revelation disappear. It's no longer in the perfectly preserved Quran. So just think about this. Paige Patterson gives some bad advice to women, and the media, reporters around the world immediately notice that is bad advice. That's bad advice right there. How dare he give that advice to women? And we turn to Muhammad and we see far, 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 far worse advice towards women, and it's beyond reproach. You're not even allowed to talk about it. In fact, if you criticize it, then you must have something wrong with you, because how could anyone criticize these wonderful teachings? Racism could be the only answer. So that's the situation we find ourselves. You point out the problem with the moral compass,
Yes.
the moral compass, that his followers seem to have a moral compass and understand. Hey, you shouldn't be raping women whose husbands are right there. That's not just rape. That's perfectly acceptable in Islam. It's also adultery.
Exactly.
They recognize that there's a problem there, and then it gets turned off. Well, we find a similar problem in the world today, that people's just basic moral compass is so skewed that, hey, we recognize you're doing something wrong, but when we deal with Islam,
we shut it down.
there can be no problems. There can be no problems with Islam.
Here is the real and the actual and the truthful moral compass that I want to leave our audience with before you close. Colossians 3:19. Husbands, love your wives and don't be harsh with them.
Amen.
Okay? Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her.
Hallelujah.
That's the kind of teaching. That's the moral compass that we are left with.
If you are supposed to, talking to you husbands out there, because we're talking to the Quran's advice is, you even fear rebellion from your wife, you smack and beat her into submission. Our advice from the Apostle Paul is, you men out there, you should love your wives so much that you should be ready to be crucified for them, right? If you're loving your wives as Christ loved the church, then you should be ready to lay down your life for your wife. And that doesn't mean you smack and beat her or you hit her the way Muhammad hit his child bride, Aisha. So we're going to keep up as much as possible with the news. Hope you continue following. Be sure to subscribe to Al-Fadi and Sam's YouTube channels. I'll have those in the description box.